Okay, so this is looking pretty messy. I would never do a finished drawing on a piece of paper like this that I'd worked out where I have these lines that needed to be erased so dark and where I've drawn my lines so dark. So either I would have started off and stayed with drawing really light, or like this one here, when I'm working it out, the lines got really dark, I would use that to my advantage and then put a clean piece of paper over top of it. I think that's what we'll do with this one. Before we do that, let's work out a few more things. So for instance, this window, it would have siding around it. It would have a frame. Same with the door. And the wall itself, we're going to go ahead and put siding on that. Okay, so let's start with the window frame. So I say, okay, once again, just going to rough it in so I get my idea. I never start with the perspective itself. I say, okay, that looks pretty good. Let's use that. And so then I can go back to my vanishing point. I can create the lines. And this time, instead of drawing all the way back to the vanishing point, which is something I would rarely, if ever, do, I can just line it up with my ruler and know that it's going back to that vanishing point. So there's the top, and I've got this one here. And here's the bottom part of that window. All right. And I've already made this very square and very even with the edge of the paper, so I don't have to go through all that again. This is close enough where I could just eyeball it. And this edge right here, think about it. Wouldn't this be getting wider if you were looking at it? And that's one thing that I really like about perspective, is it will reinforce your observational work. Because if you were looking at this, be like, oh wait, this part of the siding is closer to me. It's going to appear wider than this part of the siding. So I can just use my judgment and make it a little bit wider. Later on, I'll show you, there are ways of calculating stuff like that. But that's a lesson for another day. Okay, how about the frame on the door? Well, if this one got a little bit wider as it moved closer to you, then this one on the door would be wider still, wouldn't it? And this one would be even wider than that. Okay, and you can see it goes from wider to more narrow to more narrow to more narrow as it goes away from you, because perspective works that way. Let's go ahead and make the top of the door here, and it's just going to be lined up with this window. So here I know exactly how long this line is going to be. I don't have to go all the way back to my vanishing point. I can just line things up. And here. There it is. Okay, now the final thing would be my siding. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on. Now one way you could do to measure things out and get it right is to, well, measure. So for instance, with this one I decided, well, I'll just go ahead and I'll make 8 pieces of siding. Let's say that each siding piece was roughly a foot. It's an 8-foot wall right here. Cool, that works out pretty well. So I can just divide it in half. And one thing I can do is I can just at first eyeball it and then check the measurement by doing this. I line this up here with this here. Say, okay, that's my mark. Now let's line this one up with the top. And here's my mark here. If that works out, great, I found my center. But let's show you, what if you didn't? Okay, what if, for instance, you had eyeballed this and be like, okay, that looks like the center to me. Not really, but sure, let's pretend. Okay, so you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and measure that out. And here's this, and here's this right here. How's that looking? Well, I come up here to the other half. Oh my, that was really off, wasn't it? But now I only have to go between here and here. because the center is going to be somewhere above this mark, but somewhere below this mark. And this is a little bit exaggerated, but okay, maybe right about here. So we can check again. All right, how's that? Make a unique mark like before. And I say, okay, how's that looking? Well, that's looking much better, isn't it? So that's a quick and easy way to find the center of something. All right, so then I say, okay, there's where the center is, and if I was to divide this area in half, let's see here, maybe right about there. Let's see, is that close? So I've got this measurement here, and this here. Not too bad. And so now I can even take this measurement and bring it down here, because remember, we could just cut it in half. And from there, could I eyeball it? Probably. We'll just split all these ones, I think, in half. Pretty close. Nobody's ever going to know if it's not perfect. And from there, I can line this up. Once again, everything back to the vanishing point and draw that out. Not drawing any lines that I don't need. All right, so we're pretty much there, and I decided that this was going to be on the coast, so we'd actually see the horizon at the edge of the water. So I'm going to make a measurement right here, make sure I get that straight. So in this case, my horizon line is going to be the actual horizon line and part of my drawing. Cool. And I can now use this as a cheat sheet for my finished drawing. I'm going to put a fresh piece of paper over it. And I don't know if you can really see it on the camera, but I can. I can see my drawing right underneath here. And I'll just use it either hand drawing or using a ruler to make better, cleaner lines on this paper and using it to make my finished drawing with. So now we've got this all drawn out, and we're just about ready to start in with shading and shadows and texture and really making it into a complete drawing. I just wanted to point out a couple things before we did. For one thing, on the edge right here, what I did, since this was siding, well, I didn't make it straight down. I drew, well, the edge of the siding. And I did the same thing over here by the window frame and the door frame as well. And that really does turn it from just being a bunch of lines into siding. What else? Well, also, since I was drawing this on top of that initial drawing, I could really see where things were at, and I could add some other little details like giving this door frame a little bit of width. Here on the window frame as well. It's those little touches that will really make a big difference. Even here at the bottom of the door, you can see I've pushed it in just a little bit. Okay, great. Now we're just about ready to rock and roll. But you know, before we do that, I think that I want a little bit more detail at the top. At the bottom, maybe that would be a concrete slab. But here at the top of the porch, well, it could be plywood, but in this case, we'll make it into just slats of wood. I want to show you this because our initial vanishing point was right here. Okay, I don't need to make a big mark here. I don't want a big mark here because I don't want to erase. I also don't want to create a bunch of lines here that I would have to erase. I don't need to. So what I'll do is I'll make a little mark every so often, and I don't need to measure this the way I did here. I won't worry about those being all perfectly uniform, but all those little dots, those will all represent, very light, those will all represent slats, boards that are going across this top here. So then I can just line one of these marks up with the vanishing point. I don't have to draw it all out. And just draw. There you go. And there it is. With the next one, just lining that up with the vanishing point. So forth and so on. So there we go. Now we've got all these wooden slats across the roof here, and they all line up with the vanishing point, but I don't have to erase a single thing because I didn't draw it all the way back. I just used my ruler for that. Okay, now I think we're ready to go ahead and start putting in all the texture, all the values for the form, for the color, for the shadows, etc. And turn this into this.